Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing inspiration using some subscription products from Altenew, including the Craft a Flower and the Build a Garden set. There are a few other new products that I didn't get a chance to use in the video, but I do want to show you them in just a moment. And just to let you know, this is part of a video hop, so I will have more information listed down below in my video description and over on my blog. Now, one of the new things coming out are the glitter cardstock packs. I love these from Altenew. They are absolutely the perfect size. So there's 4 new packs. This first one is a blue crystal. So there's 3 different shades of blue in this set. The next set is the brilliant red, and there's also 3 different shades of the glitter cardstock here. Then we have the purple galore, wonderful purple shades in this. These work perfect for running through a small die cut machine. And then the last one is golden sunrise. Now this one I will be using in my card today. Another thing I wanted to show you is the Craft a Flower. This is the Fragrant Peony, which I will be using today. And I just wanted to show you this, that this is not available at this time. This was actually, if you sign up for the Craft Your Life subscriptions, this is one of them. You had to sign up by a certain date in order to get this marigold butterfly. Now, I still really want to use this set because it is gorgeous. And in the Craft Your Life subscriptions, you get stamp sets, embossing folders, stencils, and dies, and I believe a mini blending brush. So these are always one of my favorite, are the Craft Your Life project kits. Now, in order to have received that particular one, you had to have signed up for the subscription plan by May 5th. This botanical line art one is from the Craft Your Life project kit. This one, if you sign up for either the Ultimate subscription plan or the Craft Your Life project kit monthly subscription, you have until June 2nd to sign up, and this would be what you would receive. I just have the stamp set for right now, but you would also have the embossing folder, the die, and the stencils. Definitely visit the Altenew website for more information about their subscriptions. I am going to be using today the Build a Garden set, which is another one of my favorites from Altenew. This one is the Rocktrumpet, so it's got this huge, beautiful floral image. It also has these stencils, and I love how they divide them up. There are quite a few here, but they are kind of divided, so there's different layers on each stencil to help kind of minimize how many stencils you have. Another new product coming out are some more of these circle ink pads. So we have 2 collections. There is a red sunset, which I'm going to just quickly swatch out here for you. The first color was blush. Then we have rouge. We have a crimson and velvet, a beautiful assortment of reds, great for ink blending or doing your stamp layering with. Now the second collection is called Sweet Dreams. Now I will be using this one today. The first color is Dewdrops. Then we have Aqualicious, Teal Cave, and Galactical Stream. And I just absolutely love these color combinations. The first card I'm going to create is using this Craft a Flower. I have really been loving what they're doing with their building dies. So for this one, there are 2 different sets for the flowers. And you'll notice in the middle, there are some keyholes. Now that's going to help us line up our layering flower. There's one set that has a bigger keyhole, and then there's another set that has a smaller keyhole. So I separated those 2 just to make sure I keep each one in its own little grouping. And I'm just running these through a mini die cutting machine out of some various colors of cardstock that I pulled out of my scrap drawer. To keep things simple, I just die cut the flowers out of the same color of cardstock, but you could change it into like a light, medium, and dark shade for layering them up. The leaves I did do in 2 different colors of green. So now taking a closer look, this is the larger keyhole set in the center. And what's really neat is they have them numbered. So the die has a number on it, which means that transfers into the cardstock. You're not going to see that in the end result. So I'm going to start off first by kind of separating my piles, and I am going to add some shading. So I started with Teal Cave, and I'm using one of the, I think this is the mini blending brush, which is one of my favorite blending tools. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I really love all of the blending brushes from Altenew, and I use all three of my favorite ones in the video today. I'm just picking up some of that Teal Cave ink, starting in the center and blending out towards the end of the petals, and I did that for both sets of flowers. Now I'm going to work on my greenery. Now for my first set of leaves, which is die cut out of the lighter cardstock, I did Lagoon. I believe it was Lagoon ink. And the darker color here for the darker cardstock, I am using Emerald. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description too. For the center of the flowers, I die cut all of the pieces out of that same color cardstock. This is kind of a, I don't want to say mustard, but it's a different shade of yellow. And I used Mangrove root to do some blending on the outside edge. I'm going to take my leaves and place them in my splatter box, and I'm adding a couple drops of water to some of this white and gold ink. Now this is the metallic watercolor set from Altenew, and I picked up some of the white and I'm splattering that over my leaves. I cleaned my brush and now I'm bringing in the gold. So this was just to add a little bit of interest to the leaves. While that is drying, I'm going to move on to the assembly of my flowers. So I started out, that bottom layer has the number 1 on it. Then I put in the layer with the number 2, and then the top layer with number 3. Each time I'm lining up those keyholes. So for the centers, you have a bottom piece that has that large keyhole I lined up, and then I can place this on top. And the reason you have 2 here is these are going to line up just like if you were fitting it into a puzzle. They line up perfectly on top of each other for perfect placement. And I'll repeat those same steps for this one. And I'm really only adding liquid glue right around that keyhole. I typically am not a huge fan of die cutting, but I really do love how easy these are to put together. I think they did this in their last set where it had like the gate and the tree, that really big, beautiful tree that I did a video on last month. And I am really loving how easy these are to put together. I took some time off screen to make my arrangement on my front of the card. And I need to add a sentiment on here, so I am using the Versatile Greetings set. This is a die set and a hot foil plate. I am just going to use the word die, and I'm die cutting it out of some of that new glitter cardstock. I think this one was the Golden Sunrise. I also die cut it a couple more times out of heavyweight white cardstock and layered that together with my liquid glue. That layers or those layers of white cardstock is going to add a little bit of dimension and lift to my die cut word. To start assembling my arrangement, the smart thing would be to pick this up with some press and seal, but I don't know. I really love just doing this myself where I can kind of rearrange things as I want. I have a general idea of where everything is going to go, so I just pull it out as needed and tuck them back in. So I'm just adding the liquid glue to the leaves and tucking them back in. For most of it, I'm using the dark leaves as the back piece and then adding the light colored leaves on the top. For the flowers, I'm going to add some of the Altenew foam tape to the back of those, and they're going to overhang just a little bit. So this first one, I added the foam tape to. The second flower, I'm only adding foam tape to the bottom of the flower and then liquid glue to the other side. Where I'm adding the liquid glue is where it's going to overlap that top flower. I probably should have stamped my sentiment before I placed all of my images on here, but I never think of my sentiment until afterwards. So I am going to bring in my stamp wheel to stamp my sentiment, and I have these plastic corners. I can't remember the exact name, but I will have them linked down below. What it does is help you line this up in the center of your stamp wheel. So I picked out the one that has the A2 size on it. It's for the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock. I tucked that in and then placed my cardstock panel right in that corner. So I'm stamping my image in the Obsidian ink from Altenew. And once I have that stamped down, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape behind the letters. This is also going to overlap the flowers just a little bit. So by adding the foam tape to the right-hand side, that's going to pop it up so it's pretty flush with the flowers. I did end up trimming my panel down a little bit, I believe to 4 by 5 1/4. And what I'll do is just take some tape runner, add it to the back of my panel, and then I can place this on a card front that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I just went through my cardstock stash and found something that was pretty similar to my flowers, since I couldn't remember what color my flowers were because it was just came out of my scrap bin. So that is going to finish off this first card using the craft flower for this month. Next, I'm going to make a card, or actually 2 cards, using the Build a Garden set Rocktrumpet. Now this stamp is huge, so I had to bring out my Misty for this, and I didn't even cut my cardstock to be big enough. So I would recommend cutting your cardstock to fit the entire panel or the entire inside of your Misty if you want to get the full image. I'm doing one of my favorite things, which is stamping in a light gray ink. It's going to be hard to see on camera until it gets stenciled in, but I like doing this. This is limestone ink. I like stamping my image like this first because sometimes I really like how it can have a no line coloring look to it. So after I stamped it down, I'm leaving that in my stamping tool and I'm bringing this over to my magnetic work surface. I'm lining up the first layer of the stencil, and I always refer to the guides just to get an idea of how many ink colors I'm going to need, how it's going to line up. Based off of it, I picked out 3 colors of ink, and I'm going to use the new Sweet Dreams set. I'm starting out with Aqualicious, which is actually the second lightest in the set. And for this one, I'm using a large blending brush from Altenew. These cover so much area at once. So I applied that ink over the open areas of the stencil. There was a small piece down in the bottom corner I masked off with Post-it tape. So after I removed the stencil, I just masked off the other areas, placed that over my flower, and ink blended that one as well. I'll bring in the second layer of the stencil for the flowers, line that up, and for this one, I'm going to be using Teal Cave. So I'm using the same blending brush since this is just a shade darker. I tap off on my work surface just to kind of remove that first initial pickup of ink and then going over those open areas again of the stencil. So you can see how that color is really building up in those different shades. Now for the third layer of the stencil for the flowers, I'm using Galactic Stream. I think I said that wrong earlier. It's Galactic Stream. And for this one, I brought in a small blending brush. I think I had some leftover blue on there, so you can see the shading is a little different. I still really love it. I think it's beautiful, so I'm just going to keep working with it. And I'm going to go through the rest of the areas of the stencil, just kind of shifting it and lining it up as needed. And if you get lost along the way, they always have their guide that you can refer back to. I can move on to the leaves next, which this color, I'm starting out with the lightest layer, is going to be Jade ink. Once again, using a large blending brush to do this. And at this point, I'm going to call this ink blending grazing because as I go through the rest of the layers, I'm not going to really cover the whole area completely. I'm not going to focus on it too much. I'm really just going to graze over the area. One of the reasons I started doing this is I wanted it to be a little bit more kind of free flowing. I didn't want it to be so sectioned. And I think by just kind of grazing over it and not spending a lot of time on the stencil kind of helps do that. So here I moved on through the stencils and I'm applying eucalyptus ink. Once again, just going over those areas. And as it softens out a little bit, you can see you're not getting such harsh lines, I guess you could say, with the stencil. I moved on to a smaller blending brush. This one is the mini blending brush again, another one of my favorites, to get in those smaller areas and not have to mask everything off so much. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of times I kind of like the no line look, but for this particular flower, I felt that it needed the black outline. So I brought it back over to my Misty and I'm stamping it in the Altenew Obsidian ink, just making sure to apply good pressure to get all of those fine lines. Now with the Obsidian ink, you want to make sure you give this time to dry before running it through your die cut machine. Otherwise, that ink will transfer to your plates. So just be sure to clean your die cut plates as well after you die cut that. So with this particular flower, you can see it is huge. And I think you have a lot of versatility with that. Right here, I'm thinking about 2 cards and cutting it so it fits on 2 cards. But you can see where even if you hadn't used the coordinating die, you could have turned this into a 5x7 card. You could have done slimline, mini slimline. There are so many options. I decided to kind of split this between 2 cards. So I just kind of tacked that first part down and trim off the excess. And then I'm bringing that second half over and tacking that down. I only applied a little bit of adhesive to the back because I wasn't really sure what direction I was going to go with this. I decided I'm just going to go for it. I'm not adding any dimension. I'm just going to go back and add adhesive all over the back of this panel, and I love it coming off from the side. Now, this panel is 4¼ by 5½. You can see the card on the right. I was really playing with different ideas. I actually kind of struggled with that one. I decided to turn it into a strip that's going to go down the middle of my card. So I layered it on a piece of kind of aqua colored cardstock to match the flowers. And then I'm adding that onto my white panel. So they're both going to be A2 size cards. Once again, I'm going to stamp my sentiments, and I'm using the stamp wheel for this. I just tucked it down in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to ink it up with the Obsidian ink and stamp that down. Just be careful. I mean, you can always stamp it again if you don't get it perfectly stamped the first time. I'm just being kind of gentle because these are delicate letters, and I don't want to squish or distort them. For my second card, I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "You got this," because this one has a coordinating die. I really do appreciate when companies come out with coordinating dies for some of these sentiments because I really like popping my sentiments up off of the card. So I inked that up again in the Obsidian ink, stamped that down, and used the coordinating die to die cut it out. Once again, just be mindful that this is a pigment ink, and so it does stay wet a little bit longer. Now, I decided I went back and die cut the word "hey," and this is off of the Versatile Greetings die set. I just really loved that pop of black, so I'm going to add that onto this first card that I had stamped that longer sentiment on. So I think that really draws your attention to the sentiment. And the "You got this" I attached to the center of the card that I have that strip going down the center. So there are my 3 projects for you today. I absolutely love these subscription kits from Altenew. I think they are a phenomenal value. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of a video hop, so be sure to leave a comment down below and over on the Altenew video as well. I will have all of that information in the video description and on my blog, but be sure to leave comments to be entered to win the giveaway. I just want to thank you all so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you again real soon.